Commander Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of Earth Defense Station Liberty, watching the stars through the massive glass window. The station floated far beyond Pluto, at the edge of human space. It was quiet out here, peaceful even. Jake had been stationed here for 3 years and nothing exciting ever happened. Ships came and went, carrying supplies between Earth and the outer colonies. Trade vessels moved slowly through the dark. Everything was normal. Then the alarm started, screaming. Jake ran to the control room where his crew was already at their stations. Lieutenant Ben Parker was staring at his screen with wide eyes. "Commander, you need to see this," he said, his voice shaking. Jake looked at the display and felt his heart stop. Dozens of massive ships were appearing out of nowhere, materializing, from hyperspace like ghosts becoming real. These were not human ships, they were huge, dark, and covered in strange symbols that glowed with purple light. "How many?" Jake asked. 57 ships, sir." "No, wait. More are coming." Ben's fingers moved quickly over his controls. 73 now. They're still appearing. Jake had never seen ships this big. The largest human vessel was maybe 300 meters long. These alien ships looked like they were over 2 kilometers each. They moved in perfect formation like a school of metal fish swimming through space. "Get me Admiral Carter." Now. The screen flickered and Admiral Lisa Carter's face appeared. She was on Earth, in the defense headquarters buried deep under the Rocky Mountains. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her blue eyes were sharp and focused. Lisa had fought in the Mars Colony War 20 years ago. She was the best military mind humanity had. "Jake, what's the situation?" she asked. "Unknown. Alien fleet, ma'am. Nearly 80 ships, they're massive. Nothing like anything we've ever seen." Lisa's expression didn't change, but Jake could see the worry in her eyes. "Any communication attempts?" "Not yet, ma'am. They're just sitting there, watching us." Before Lisa could respond, the communication board lit up. A signal was coming from the alien fleet. Jake looked at his communications officer, Sergeant Amy Watson. She was young, maybe 25, with red hair and freckles. Her hands were shaking as she worked. "It's coming through on multiple frequencies," Amy said. "They want to talk." "Put it through," Jake ordered. The screen changed, and Jake found himself looking at something that made his blood run cold. The alien was tall, maybe 8 feet, with dark green scales covering its body. Its eyes were yellow and cold, like a snake's eyes. It wore what looked like military armor covered in metals and symbols. "I am High Chancellor Vextar of the Galactic Hegemony," the creature said. Its voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. "I speak for the eternal empire that rules 3,000 worlds across this galaxy." Jake swallowed hard. 3,000 worlds. Humanity had barely colonized 20 planets. "I am Commander Morrison of Earth Defense. What do you want?" The alien's mouth opened, showing rows of sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. "We come with a generous offer for your species. Your world, Earth, will join the hegemony as a protected planet. You will provide soldiers for our armies and resources for our empire. In return, we will protect you from the dangers of space." "And if we refuse?" Jake asked, though he already knew he wouldn't like the answer. "Refusal is not an option that ends well," Vextar said calmly. "No species has ever successfully resisted the hegemony. We have conquered civilizations that were older and more advanced than yours. Your weapons are primitive, your ships are slow, your technology is like toys compared to ours." On another screen, Jake could see Admiral Carter talking quickly to her staff. Her face was grim. Behind her, President Helen Martinez had arrived. The president was a small woman with dark hair and kind eyes, but Jake had heard she was tougher than steel when she needed to be. "May I speak to your leader?" Vextar asked, noticing the president on the screen. President Martinez stepped forward. "I'm President Martinez. I speak for Earth and all human colonies." "Excellent. You seem intelligent for a primitive species. I will explain the process. Your people will be evaluated and assigned roles within the hegemony. The strongest will become soldiers. The smartest will become technicians and administrators. The rest will work in our factories and farms. Do not worry. We are not cruel masters. You will be fed and housed appropriately. Dr. Amanda Stone, Earth's top expert on alien life, had been listening from her laboratory. She was a quiet woman with brown hair and thick glasses, but her mind was sharp as a razor. She'd spent her whole life wondering what aliens might be like. Now she knew, and it terrified her. What happens to our culture? President Martinez asked. Our governments, our way of life, those things are no longer necessary, Vextar replied. The hegemony provides all structure. Individual cultures only cause conflict and inefficiency. You will be much happier as part of something larger than yourselves. Jake watched President Martinez's face change. Her kind expression disappeared, replaced by something cold and hard. And if we refuse your generous offer? Then we will implement standard pacification procedures. Your military will be destroyed. Your leaders will be removed. Your population will be relocated to work camps where they can be properly educated about their new role in the galaxy. It is more difficult for everyone, but the end result is the same. The alien paused, studying the human faces on his screen. You should understand that resistance is pointless. We have been conquering worlds for over 1,000 years. We have destroyed species that had weapons you cannot imagine. Your planet has been observed for some time. We know your capabilities. You have nuclear weapons, crewed spacecraft, and basic energy shields. These things are not even considered real weapons by hegemony standards. President Martinez looked directly at the alien leader. High Chancellor Vexitar, I have an answer for you. I am pleased you are being reasonable. Our answer is no. We will not join your empire. We will not become your slaves. Earth belongs to humanity, and it will stay that way. The alien's expression didn't change, but his yellow eyes seemed to glow brighter. I am disappointed but not surprised. Primitive species often make emotional decisions instead of logical ones. Very well. You have 30 standard days to reconsider. After that, the integration fleet will arrive to begin pacification procedures. I suggest you use this time to prepare your people for their new lives. The screen went dark. The alien ships began moving, forming a defensive perimeter around the outer solar system. They weren't leaving. They were waiting. Jake looked at the tactical display. 87 alien warships now surrounded human space. Each one could probably destroy Earth's entire fleet single-handedly. Admiral, Jake said quietly, what do we do now? Lisa Carter's face was stone cold. Now we get ready for war. 21 days had passed since the aliens gave their ultimatum. Earth was not sitting quietly. Every military base on the planet was working around the clock. Factories that used to make cars and computers were now building weapons and ships. Every person who could hold a tool was helping prepare for war. Colonel Ben Parker stood on the observation deck of Armstrong Base, the military fortress built inside a crater on the moon. Through the reinforced glass, he could see Earth hanging in space like a blue and white marble. It looked so peaceful from here. But Ben knew that in 9 days, that peace would be shattered. Colonel, the last of the quantum mines are in position, reported Captain Nicole Grant. She had just returned from a dangerous mission in her stealth ship called the Wolverine. Nicole was 32 years old with short black hair and sharp green eyes. She was the best pilot in the Earth fleet, able to fly her small ship through asteroid fields without being detected. Ben nodded. The quantum mines were Earth's secret weapon, developed by the brightest scientists working day and night. They were small devices that created tears in space when they exploded. The aliens had never seen anything like them, because no other species had been crazy enough to weaponize dimensional rifts. How many do we have deployed? Ben asked. 347 mines scattered throughout the outer system, Nicole replied. Major Collins finished the last deployment 6 hours ago. Major Steve Collins was in charge of the mine placement operation. He was a big man with a red beard who used to work on asteroid mining ships before the war started. Steve knew every rock and ice chunk in the outer solar system. If anyone could hide mines where the aliens wouldn't expect them, it was Steve. In the command center deep inside Armstrong Base, Admiral Lisa Carter was studying tactical displays with her staff. The alien fleet had grown larger over the past 3 weeks. More ships kept arriving through hyperspace. Earth's long-range sensors now counted over 200 massive warships surrounding the solar system. "They're not taking any chances," said Dr. Amanda Stone, who had been studying the alien formations. "This is 3 times the size of their first fleet." Amanda had spent the last 3 weeks analyzing every piece of data they could gather about the aliens. She discovered that the hegemony followed very predictable patterns. They always used the same attack formations. They always sent the same types of ships. They had conquered so many worlds, using the same methods that they never changed. Their tactics. That might be their weakness, Amanda had told the Admiral. They're so used to winning easily that they don't know how to adapt when something unexpected happens. The communication board suddenly came alive. The aliens were contacting Earth again. "Put it through," Admiral Carter ordered. The screen lit, up with the image of a different alien than before. This one was even larger than High Chancellor Vextar, with darker scales and more scars covering his armor. His yellow eyes burned with anger. "I am Fleet Commander Zakthul," the alien announced. "I have come to complete the integration of your world. Your 30 days are over. You will surrender immediately or face complete destruction." President Martinez appeared on screen from her bunker in Washington. She looked tired but determined. "Commander Zakthul, our answer remains the same. Earth will not surrender." The alien commander's mouth opened in what looked like a laugh. "Your bravery is admirable but foolish. Do you see my fleet? 212 warships, each capable of destroying your entire planet. Your resistance will last perhaps 1 hour. Then you'd better get started," the president replied calmly. Zakthul's eyes narrowed. "Very well. Begin the attack." The screen went dark. Across the solar system, alarm klaxons began sounding on every human ship and station. Captain Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel Defiance, humanity's most advanced warship. It was still tiny compared to the alien ships, but it was fast and packed with every weapon Earth could build. Ryan was 40 years old with gray hair and calm blue eyes. He had commanded merchant ships before the war, but now he was leading humanity's main battle fleet. "All ships, this is Brooks, remember the plan. We're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to survive long enough to hurt them." The alien fleet began moving toward Earth. Their ships were massive and slow, but they bristled with weapons that could destroy entire cities with single shots. They moved in perfect formation, just like they had conquered thousands of other worlds. But as they passed through the outer solar system, something unexpected happened. Engineer Tony Clark was stationed on Ceres, the largest asteroid in the belt, between Mars and Jupiter. Tony had spent the last 3 weeks modifying mining charges, the explosives used to break apart asteroids. But instead of making small controlled explosions, these charges were designed to shatter entire asteroids into clouds of high-speed debris. "Charges armed and ready," Tony reported to Armstrong Base. "Execute," Colonel Parker ordered. Tony pressed the detonator. Throughout the asteroid belt, hundreds of rocks exploded simultaneously. The alien fleet suddenly found themselves flying through clouds of metal and stone, moving at thousands of kilometers per hour. The alien shields absorbed most of the impacts, but the debris clouds made their sensors useless. They couldn't see what was coming next. Pilot Amy Watson led a squadron of 30 small fighters toward the alien fleet. Amy was the young communications officer from Defense Station Liberty, but she was also one of Earth's best pilots. Her fighter was smaller than the aliens' escape pods, but it was fast and heavily armed. "Dragon Squadron, follow my lead," Amy said into her radio. "Hit them fast and get out. Don't try to be heroes." The human fighters swarmed around the massive alien ships like angry insects. The aliens' main weapons were designed to fight other large ships. They couldn't track targets as small and fast as the human fighters. Amy's fighter screamed past the bridge of an alien warship, firing everything she had. Her missiles punched through the ship's shields and exploded against the hull. The damage was small, but it was the first time in 1,000 years that anyone had hurt a hegemony warship. More fighters attacked from different directions. The aliens tried to respond, but their weapons were too slow and their ships were too big. It was like trying to swat flies with hammers. Then Commander Morrison activated the quantum mines. The space around the alien fleet suddenly lit up with brilliant white explosions. But these weren't normal explosions. The quantum mines tore holes in reality itself. Several alien ships were caught in the dimensional rifts and simply vanished, pulled into spaces that didn't exist. For the first time in their species' history, the hegemony was confused. Their perfect formation broke apart as ship commanders tried to avoid the strange attacks they didn't understand. Fleet Commander Zach Thule stared at his tactical display in shock. He had lost 15 ships in the first 10 minutes of battle. This was impossible. Primitive species didn't fight like this. "Pull back to minimum safe distance," he ordered. "We need to analyze these new weapons." As the alien fleet retreated, cheers echoed through every human ship and station. They had done the impossible. They had made the mighty galactic hegemony run away. But everyone knew this was just the beginning. The aliens would be back, and next time they would be ready. The alien fleet had pulled back to the edge of the solar system, but they were still there, watching, waiting, learning. Dr. Amanda Stone knew they wouldn't make the same mistakes twice. Amanda worked in her laboratory on Mars, surrounded by pieces of alien technology that human fighters had torn from damaged enemy ships. She had been studying the fragments for weeks, trying to understand how the hegemony built their empire. "I think I've found something important," she told Admiral Carter over the communication link. Amanda's brown hair was messy from working, long hours, and her glasses were smudged, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "What did you find?" the Admiral asked. "Their weakness isn't their technology, it's their thinking. Look at these ship designs." Amanda held up a piece of alien metal covered in circuits. "Everything is built the same way. Same materials, same patterns, same solutions to every problem. They've been using the same designs for hundreds of years." Amanda walked to her computer and pulled up thousands of files. "I've analyzed their attack patterns, their ship movements, even the way they talk. Everything follows rules. Strict rules that never change. They've become so used to winning that they've forgotten how to think differently." Admiral Carter leaned forward. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying they're predictable. If we can think of something they've never seen before, something that breaks their rules, they won't know how to respond." In another part of Mars colony, General Paul Hughes was meeting with his top commanders. Paul was a tall man with white hair and scars on his hands from the Mars colony war. He had been thinking about Amanda's research, and it had given him a dangerous idea. "We're going to take the fight to them," Paul announced to the room full of officers. Captain Ryan Brooks looked up from his tactical display. "Sir, we barely survived their first attack. How can we possibly attack them?" "Because they're not expecting it," Paul replied. "Every species they've conquered has waited for the aliens to attack them. No one has ever struck first at hegemony territory." Colonel Ben Parker studied the star maps on the wall. "What targets do you have in mind?" 3 outposts in nearby systems. Dr. Stone found their locations in the captured data files: a mining station, a communication hub, and a shipyard. "We're not going to try to destroy them. We're going to confuse them." Paul walked to the star map and pointed to 3 red dots. "Captain Brooks will lead the main strike force in the Defiance. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez will take the stealth ship Ghost for infiltration missions. The goal isn't to win battles. It's to make them wonder what we're planning." Sam Rodriguez was 28 years old with dark skin and quick hands. He had grown up fixing broken machines in the asteroid mines. Now he was one of the best stealth pilots in the Earth fleet. His ship Ghost was small and quiet, almost invisible to most sensors. "What kind of infiltration are we talking about?" Sam asked. Dr. Stone smiled. "The kind that will drive them crazy. We're going to sabotage their equipment in ways they won't notice right away. Small changes that will cause big problems later." 3 days later, Sam Rodriguez guided the Ghost through hyperspace toward the first target. The mining station called Kepler 7 was built inside a large asteroid. It produced metals that the hegemony used to build their ships. The station's defenses were strong against large attacks, but they weren't designed to stop a single small ship. Sam slipped the Ghost past their sensors like a shadow. Inside the asteroid, Sergeant Kelly Murphy and Corporal Matt Thompson worked quickly to plant their devices. Kelly was a small woman with blonde hair who had trained as a computer expert before the war. Matt was a big man with steady hands who used to repair mining equipment. "Reprogramming complete," Kelly whispered into her radio. "The mining machines will now produce metal that looks perfect but has tiny flaws. It will take months before anyone notices that their new ships are weaker than they should be." At the same time, Captain Brooks led his strike force to the communication hub at Sigma Prime. This station sent messages between different parts of the Hegemony Empire. Brooks didn't try to destroy it. Instead, his team planted a computer virus that would cause small delays in message transmission. "It's beautiful," said Linda Foster, the communication expert who designed the virus. Linda was a quiet woman with red hair who had worked for Earth's internet companies before the war. "The delays will be random and small. They'll spend months trying to figure out if it's equipment failure or enemy action." The third target was the most dangerous. The shipyard at Titan's Edge built the Hegemony's warships. Lieutenant Amy Watson, now promoted after her heroic fighter pilot actions, led a team of saboteurs onto the station. "Remember, we're not here to blow things up right away," Amy told her team as they snuck through the station's corridors. "We're planting delayed explosives that will go off weeks from now, just as new ships are being launched." The team moved like ghosts through the alien facility. The Hegemony workers were tall, gray creatures with 4 arms who had been conquered centuries ago. They worked without talking, following their programmed routines exactly. They never looked up from their tasks, which made it easy for the humans to plant their devices. But the most important mission was happening in a different part of space. Dr. Stone and Linda Foster had been working together on something that could change everything. They had figured out how to broadcast messages across the entire Hegemony communication network. "Are you sure this will work?" Linda asked as she prepared the transmission equipment. "The virus we planted at Sigma Prime has given us access to their entire network," Amanda replied. "We can send a message to every conquered world in their empire." Linda activated the transmitter. Across 3,000 worlds, a message began playing in hundreds of different languages. It was simple but powerful. "This is Earth calling all conquered peoples of the galaxy. You have been told that resistance is impossible. You have been told that the Hegemony cannot be defeated. We are here to tell you that this is a lie. We are fighting them. We are winning. You are not alone. You do not have to obey. Freedom is possible." The message played for only 30 seconds before Hegemony technicians cut the transmission. But 30 seconds was enough. On the water world of Kepler Prime, the aquatic Kelder stopped their deep-sea mining work and looked up at their overseers for the first time in decades. On the hive world of Nexus 7, the insectoid Threx began talking to each other instead of working in silence. On the energy world of Vega Station, the plasma beings started asking questions about why they had to power Hegemony ships. Fleet Commander Zach Thule received reports from across the Empire. Small acts of rebellion were breaking out everywhere. Workers were slowing down. Some were refusing orders. A few were even sabotaging equipment. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "These species have been pacified for centuries. They don't even remember what freedom means." His second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Krelax, studied the reports. "It's the humans, sir. Somehow they've inspired hope across the entire empire." Zach Thule's yellow eyes burned with rage. "Then we will crush that hope. Send word to the High Council. I want every available warship sent to Earth. We will not just conquer this world. We will destroy it so completely that no other species will ever dare to resist us again." But even as he gave the order, Zach Thule felt something he had never experienced before. For the first time in his long military career, he was worried. These humans didn't fight like any enemy he had ever faced. They were unpredictable, creative, and worst of all, they were giving other species dangerous ideas about freedom. The war was no longer just about conquering one small world. It was about the survival of the Hegemony itself. The reports coming into Earth Defense Command were both exciting and terrifying. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the underground war room, watching displays that showed rebellion breaking out across 17 different star systems. The message that Dr. Stone and Linda Foster had broadcast was working better than anyone had hoped. The Kelder have stopped all deep-sea mining operations on 4 worlds. reported Lieutenant Ben Parker, who had been promoted after his service at Armstrong Base. The Threx abandoned 3 hive ship construction sites. The energy beings at Nexus Prime are disrupting power grids across their entire sector. But the good news came with a price. Captain Nicole Grant's reconnaissance ship had just returned from the edge of the solar system with frightening intelligence. Her face was pale as she delivered her report. "The Hegemony's response fleet is massive," Nicole said, her voice shaking slightly. "Over 600 warships. It's 3 times larger than anything they've ever sent to conquer a single world." Admiral Carter felt her heart sink. Earth's entire military had maybe 200 ships, and most of those were converted cargo vessels, with weapons bolted onto them. Against 600 Hegemony warships, humanity didn't stand a chance in a straight fight. "There's more," Nicole continued. "These aren't the same ships we fought before. Our spies in the outer system report that they've been modified. New armor, new weapons, new shields designed specifically to counter our tactics." Dr. Amanda Stone looked up from her computer terminal. She had been analyzing the data from Nicole's reconnaissance mission. "They've learned from our previous attacks. The new ships have anti-fighter defense systems and quantum disruption shields to stop our dimensional mines." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The tactics that had saved Earth before wouldn't work again. The aliens had adapted. President Helen Martinez entered the war room, followed by General Paul Hughes. The president looked older than she had a month ago. The stress of leading humanity through its first interstellar war was showing on her face. "What are our options?" she asked simply. General Hughes spread out tactical maps on the central table. "We have maybe 72 hours before their fleet arrives. Every available ship is being prepared for battle, but we're still outnumbered 3-1 by an enemy with superior technology." "So we surrender?" asked someone from the back of the room. "No," said Admiral Carter firmly. "We fight, but we fight smart." Commander Jake Morrison had been quiet during the briefing, but now he stepped forward. Jake had been promoted to overall fleet coordination after his service at Defense Station Liberty. His experience watching the enemy had given him insights that others missed. "I've been studying their approach patterns," Jake said. "They're coming in the same formation they always use. 3 attack groups, heavy ships in front, support vessels behind. They never change this pattern because it's always worked before." Engineer Tony Clark, who had helped win the first battle with his asteroid mining charges, was working on something new in his workshop on Ceres. Tony was surrounded by components that looked like they belonged in a dozen different machines. "If we can't fight them ship to ship, we need to change the battlefield," Tony muttered to himself as he worked. His latest project was ambitious even by human standards. He was trying to turn the sun itself into a weapon. "The solar magnetic field generators are almost ready," he reported to Admiral Carter over the communication link. "But I need more time to test them." "How much time?" the Admiral asked. "At least a week, maybe 2. "You have 36 hours. Tony wiped sweat from his forehead. "Then we'd better hope this works on the first try." Meanwhile, pilot Jack Turner and engineer Kathy Lewis were working together on the space station orbiting Mercury, the planet closest to the sun. Jack was a veteran pilot with steady nerves and quick reflexes. Kathy was a brilliant engineer who understood solar physics better than anyone else in the system. "The positioning has to be perfect," Kathy explained as she calibrated the solar array satellites. "If we're off by even a few degrees, the magnetic field manipulation won't work." Jack nodded as he programmed the flight paths for the human fleet. "And if the Hegemony ships aren't in exactly the right positions when we trigger the solar flare, we'll just be giving them a light show." The plan was incredibly dangerous. No human had ever tried to weaponize a star before. The mathematics were complex. The timing had to be perfect. And if anything went wrong, Earth's entire fleet could be destroyed by their own weapon. But it was their only chance. As the hours counted down, reports kept coming in from across the galaxy. The rebellions that Earth's message had inspired were growing stronger. On some worlds, the conquered species had completely stopped working. On others, they were actively fighting their hegemony overseers. "The Empire is cracking," Dr. Stone told the Admiral. "But they're also getting desperate. Intelligence reports suggest they're planning to make an example of Earth. Complete destruction to show other worlds what happens when you resist." The Hegemony fleet was now visible to Earth's long-range sensors. 600 massive warships moving in perfect formation toward the solar system. Fleet Commander Zach Thule was leading the attack personally, determined to end humanity's rebellion, once and for all. "All civilian ships are to evacuate to the outer colonies immediately," President Martinez announced over the planetary communication system. "Military personnel and essential workers only will remain in the inner solar system." But most civilians refused to leave. Cargo ship captains volunteered to join the defense fleet. Asteroid miners brought their industrial equipment to help build weapons. Even the colonists on distant worlds sent what ships they could spare. Captain Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge of the Defiance, now serving as the flagship of Earth's combined fleet. Through the view screen, he could see dozens of other ships taking position around him. Warships, cargo vessels, mining ships, even passenger liners that had been fitted with whatever weapons could be found. "It's not much of a fleet," said his second-in-command, Lieutenant Amy Watson, who had transferred from her fighter squadron to help coordinate the battle. "No," Ryan agreed, watching more ships arrive to join the formation. "But it's our fleet." The final piece of the plan was the most dangerous. A small group of ships led by Major Steve Collins would have to guide the Hegemony fleet into exactly the right position around the sun. This meant flying directly into the path of 600 enemy warships and somehow surviving long enough to lead them where they needed to go. "Remember," Admiral Carter's voice came over the fleet communication system, "we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to do something so crazy that they won't see it coming until it's too late." Commander Morrison watched the tactical display as the enemy fleet entered the outer solar system. The Hegemony ships moved with the same confidence they had shown for 1,000 years. They expected this to be like every other conquest, quick, brutal, and decisive. They had no idea that humanity was about to turn their own star against them. "All ships, this is Admiral Carter," came the final transmission. "Today we're not just fighting for Earth, we're fighting for every species that dreams of freedom. We're fighting to show the galaxy that tyrants can be defeated. Whatever happens next, remember that freedom is worth any price." The Hegemony fleet was 3 hours away from Earth. The battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy was about to begin. The Hegemony warfleet entered Earth's solar system like a storm of metal and death. 600 massive warships moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls gleaming with weapon ports and shield generators. Fleet Commander Zach Thule stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small human fleet ahead of him. "Pathetic," he said to his officers. "They have barely 200 ships, most of them converted cargo vessels. This will be over in minutes." But Major Steve Collins flying. His small patrol ship Ranger had other plans. Steve knew the alien formations better than anyone after studying them for months. He also knew that the aliens always followed the same attack patterns. They would try to surround Earth's fleet and destroy it quickly. "All ships, follow my lead," Steve broadcast to the human fleet. "We're going to give them exactly what they expect." The human ships began retreating toward the sun, firing their weapons as they fell back. To the aliens, it looked like a desperate last stand. The Hegemony fleet followed, eager to finish the battle quickly. Captain Ryan Brooks watched, his tactical display on the bridge of the Defiance. The alien ships were taking the bait perfectly. They were spreading out around the human fleet, forming a wide circle just like their battle manuals required. "They're moving into position," he reported to Admiral Carter. "Another few minutes, and they'll be exactly where we need them." On the space station near Mercury, engineer Kathy Lewis watched the solar magnetic field readings with sweat dripping down her face. The array of satellites around the sun was ready, but the timing had to be perfect. One mistake and the solar flare would miss the alien fleet completely. "Solar activity is building," she reported to pilot Jack Turner, who was coordinating the satellite positions. "We'll have one chance at this." Jack's hands moved quickly over his controls, adjusting the positions of dozens of satellites floating near the sun. Each one was equipped with powerful magnetic field generators that could influence the star's natural energy patterns. Satellites, "In position," Jack confirmed. "Ready to trigger on your command." The battle around Earth was getting more intense. The alien ships had superior weapons and shields, but the human fleet was faster and more unpredictable. Captain Nicole Grant led her stealth squadron in hit-and-run attacks that confused the alien formations. Lieutenant Amy Watson, now commanding her own destroyer called the Falcon, used every trick she had learned as a fighter pilot. Her ship darted between the massive alien vessels, firing missiles and then disappearing behind asteroids before the aliens could respond. But the human fleet was taking heavy losses. For every alien ship they damaged, they lost 3 of their own. The converted cargo ships were brave, but no match for hegemony warships. "We can't hold them much longer," Commander Jake Morrison reported from his command ship. "Whatever we're going to do, it has to be now." Engineer Tony Clark was monitoring the alien positions from his station on Ceres. His modifications to the solar array were working perfectly, but the alien fleet had to be in exactly the right formation for the plan to work. "Just a little closer," he muttered, watching the tactical display. "Come on, take the bait." Fleet Commander Zach Thule was growing impatient. The human resistance was stronger than expected, but his fleet was still winning. Soon, Earth would be destroyed and this rebellion would be over. "Move all ships to final attack positions," he ordered. "Prepare to destroy their homeworld." The hegemony fleet moved closer to the sun, surrounding the human ships in a perfect circle. It was exactly the formation they had used to conquer thousands of worlds. It was also exactly what humanity needed. "Now!" Admiral Carter shouted over the communication system. Kathy Lewis pressed the activation button. Around the sun, dozens of satellites began generating powerful magnetic fields. The star's natural magnetic field lines twisted and focused, building up incredible energy. Jack Turner guided the magnetic field patterns with precision that would have been impossible for anyone else. The sun's magnetic field began to concentrate toward one specific point in space, right where the alien fleet was positioned. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the sun erupted. A massive solar flare burst from the star's surface, but this wasn't a natural flare. The magnetic field manipulation had focused all that energy into a directed beam of pure stellar fire. The concentrated power of Earth's sun lanced out toward the alien fleet. The hegemony ships had shields that could stop any known weapon. They had armor that could survive the explosion of planets, but they had never faced the raw power of a star turned into a weapon. The solar flare struck the alien formation with the force of 1 billion nuclear bombs. Ship after ship simply vanished, vaporized by temperatures that matched the core of the sun. The alien shields were useless against such incredible energy. Fleet Commander Zach Thule watched in horror as his mighty fleet was destroyed in seconds. Ships that had conquered galaxies were reduced to glowing particles of metal. In 30 seconds, 600 hegemony warships became nothing but cosmic dust. Only a few dozen alien ships on the edges of the formation survived, and they immediately fled into hyperspace, carrying news of the impossible defeat back to hegemony space. The human fleet floated in stunned silence, watching the debris of the alien armada drift past them. They had done something that no other species in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had completely destroyed a hegemony warfleet. "Did we really just do that?" Captain Brooks asked over the communication system. "We did," Admiral Carter replied, her voice filled with amazement. "We actually did it." But the victory was bigger than just one battle. Across the galaxy, news of Earth's triumph spread faster than the hegemony could control. On world after world, conquered species rose up against their oppressors. The empire that had ruled for 1,000 years began to collapse in days. The aquatic Kelder seized control of their ocean worlds. The insectoid Threx took over their hive ships and turned them against hegemony forces. The energy beings of Nexus Prime cut power to entire sectors of the empire. Within a month, the galactic hegemony had lost half its territory. The remaining hegemony forces retreated to their core worlds, no longer the mighty empire that had terrorized the galaxy. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, Admiral Carter stood on the observation deck of the newly built Solar Defense Station. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the orbital platforms that now surrounded Earth's solar system. Commander Morrison joined her, carrying a report from the outer sensors. Another hegemony ship just passed through the checkpoint, he said. That's the 15th one this week. Let me guess, Carter said with a smile. They're fleeing to the outer rim, trying to get as far from Earth as possible. Exactly. They submit to inspection, prove they're not carrying weapons, and we let them pass, just like any other refugee ship. The solar defense perimeter was Earth's new policy. Any ship could pass through human space, but only if they followed strict rules. No weapons, no threats, and absolutely no interference with Earth or its allies. Dr. Amanda Stone entered the observation deck, carrying a tablet full of messages from across the galaxy. Her face was bright with excitement. More communications from liberated worlds, she reported. The Kelder Republic wants to establish trade relations. The Free Threx Collective is offering to share their shipbuilding technology. Even some former hegemony worlds are asking for help establishing democratic governments. Admiral Carter nodded. Earth had become something it never expected to be, not just another planet in the galaxy, but a symbol of hope and freedom that inspired entire civilizations. Any word from the hegemony core worlds? Carter asked. They're still there, but they're not expanding anymore, Amanda replied. According to our intelligence, they're too busy dealing with internal rebellions to threaten anyone else. Commander Morrison looked out at the stars, thinking about how much had changed. You know what the best part is? They can't come back here. Earth is the one place in the galaxy that the hegemony can't touch. And that's how it's going to stay, Admiral Carter said firmly. In the distance, another ship approached the solar defense perimeter. It was a hegemony vessel running away from the chaos that humanity had helped create. The ship submitted to inspection, proved it was harmless, and was allowed to pass. Earth had won more than a war. It had won the right to exist free, and it had given that same freedom to half the galaxy. The message was clear to anyone who might threaten humanity's home. Earth was off limits, and the humans would fight to protect not just themselves, but Tante, anyone who dreamed of freedom. The galaxy would never be the same. The massive Imperial warships appeared without warning in Earth's orbit on a quiet Tuesday morning. They emerged from the darkness of space, their hulls gleaming with an alien metal that absorbed rather than reflected sunlight. There were 12 ships in total, each one larger than the biggest aircraft carrier ever built by human hands. Commander Alex Hayes of the United Earth Defense Force was the first to detect the unusual energy signatures approaching the planet. He had been monitoring the deep space radar system when the alerts began to sound. At first, he thought it might be a system malfunction, nothing that size should have been able to approach Earth undetected for so long. Sir, you need to see this, Alex called to his supervisor, pointing at the screen where 12 massive objects had suddenly appeared in high Earth orbit. Within minutes, the UEDF headquarters transformed from its usual calm efficiency into organized chaos. Alex rushed through the corridors, tablet in hand, heading toward the main command center where General Susan Miller would be assembling the emergency response team. The general was already there when Alex arrived, her face grim as she studied the incoming data on the main display. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen 3 wars on Earth. Now she faced something entirely different. Tell me what we know, Commander, she said when Alex entered. 12 vessels, unknown origin, approximately 2 miles long each. They appeared simultaneously in orbit with no warning. Our systems didn't detect any approach vectors, Alex reported, his voice steady despite the fear building inside him. General Miller nodded. And their capabilities? Unknown, but the energy readings are off the charts. Nothing in our database matches their signature. As they spoke, the first images from space telescopes appeared on the screens around them. The ships were unlike anything humans had ever built, smooth and oval-shaped with no visible windows or external features, except for what appeared to be weapon ports along their sides. Get me the president, General Miller ordered an aide. And initiate Defense Protocol Alpha. I want every missile system online and all spacecraft grounded immediately. Before the aide could respond, one of the technicians shouted from across the room. General, the vessels are deploying smaller craft. Hundreds of them. On the screens, they watched as the alien motherships opened like flowers, releasing swarms of smaller vessels that began to descend toward Earth's atmosphere. In Washington, D.C., NASA astrophysicist Dr. Kevin Porter watched the same images on his laboratory screens with growing horror. For years he had argued that humanity needed to prepare for extraterrestrial contact, but few had taken his warning seriously. Now, as the first energy beam struck New York City, he realized that first contact would not be peaceful. The attack began with precision strikes against population centers. New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, each city was targeted by dozens of the smaller alien craft. They fired blue-white energy beams that cut through buildings as if they were made of paper. Skyscrapers collapsed, bridges fell, and panic spread across the globe as news of the attack spread. Kevin was still watching the destruction when 3 military officers burst into his laboratory. "Dr. Porter?" the lead officer asked. "I'm Major Frank Richards. You need to come with us immediately." "What's happening?" Kevin asked, though he already knew the answer. "That's classified, sir, but your expertise is needed. Please come now." 20 minutes later, Kevin found himself being escorted through the underground levels of the Pentagon, passing through security checkpoints until they reached a room he hadn't known existed. Inside, military personnel and government officials worked frantically at computer stations while a large screen showed the ongoing attack. Eleanor Wright, the Secretary of Defense, approached him as soon as he entered. She was a stern-looking woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for being brutally efficient. "Dr. Porter, thank you for coming quickly. We need your insight into what we're facing," she said, leading him to a display showing detailed scans of the alien vessels. Kevin studied the data, noting the unusual energy signatures and the way the ship seemed to bend space around them. "These are far beyond our technology," he said quietly. "The propulsion system alone must be at least 200 years ahead of anything we've developed." Eleanor nodded grimly. "That's what our experts say too. But here's what's strange. They're deliberately avoiding our military installations. Look at the attack pattern." She brought up a global map showing red dots where the aliens had struck. Each one was a major city or population center, but military bases, power plants, and communications hubs remained untouched. "They're not trying to disable our defenses," Kevin realized. "They want us alive but terrified." "Exactly," Eleanor agreed. "They're breaking our spirit, not our capability to fight back. These aren't random attacks. They're a message. They want surrender." Kevin watched as more cities were hit. The death toll was already in the thousands and climbing rapidly. Earth's conventional defenses were scrambling to respond, but fighter jets and anti-aircraft missiles proved largely ineffective against the alien technology. "What they don't know," Eleanor said in a lower voice, "is that we've been preparing for something like this." Kevin looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering directly, Eleanor led him to another screen where a man in a military uniform was directing an operation deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. 3 years ago, we detected unusual signals from the edge of the solar system. Nothing conclusive, but enough to worry some people in positions of power. Project Deterrent was initiated as a result. Kevin's eyes widened as he began to understand what he was seeing on the screen. "That's a quantum displacement device? It shouldn't be possible with current technology." Eleanor's expression remained neutral. "Current public technology, yes, but we've had advantages. A crashed scout ship in 2118 gave us a head start. Most of the project's scientists couldn't even comprehend what they were working with, but they made progress. Outside, the sky had darkened as smoke from burning cities drifted into the atmosphere. Emergency broadcasts played on some of the screens, showing scenes of destruction and chaos as people fled from the alien attackers. "They think we're primitive," Eleanor said, studying the attack patterns on a holographic display. "They're deliberately keeping our military intact while they break our spirit. They want surrender, not obliteration." Kevin watched as another building collapsed on screen, feeling a mixture of fear and anger rise within him. "So what's the plan?" Eleanor's eyes hardened. "We're going to send them a message they can't ignore. President Gregory Howard has authorized Operation Defiance." As if on cue, the president's voice came through on the command center's speakers, addressing the emergency session of military leaders. "The alien forces have made their intentions clear," President Howard said, his voice steady despite the circumstances. They believe we will surrender in the face of superior technology. They are about to learn how wrong they are about humanity. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Lieutenant Carol Bennett supervised the final preparations of humanity's most closely guarded secret. The underground complex stretched for miles, carved into the ancient stone over decades. On official maps, it was marked as a climate research station. The truth was far more significant. Carol walked briskly through the main chamber where 6 massive devices stood in a perfect circle. Each one looked like a silver sphere surrounded by rotating rings of dark metal. Blue energy pulsed between the rings, creating a soft humming sound that filled the chamber. "Status report," Carol called out to the team of scientists and engineers working at control stations around the room. Dr. Alan Murphy looked up from his monitor. He was an older man with wild gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too little sleep over the past 3 days. Quantum alignment at 98%. We're almost ready. Alan had been working on the quantum displacement devices for nearly 20 years. The technology had been developed after the recovery of a crashed alien scout ship in 2118, though the public had never been informed. The original ship had contained a strange engine that could bend space in ways that defied human understanding. "Dashur, targeting systems are locked and ready," reported another technician. "All 6 devices are synchronized." Carol nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. What they were about to do had never been attempted before. The devices had been tested individually at very low power, but using all 6 at once at full strength was a desperate gamble. She checked her watch. It had been 6 hours since the alien attack began. Reports from the surface indicated devastating losses in major cities across the world. The death toll was already in the millions. Her secure communication device buzzed. It was a direct line to the Pentagon Command Center. "Lieutenant Bennett, this is Secretary Wright. The President has authorized Operation Defiance. You are cleared to proceed." Carol took a deep breath. "Understood, Madam Secretary. We're initiating now." She turned to address the room. "This is not a drill. Begin final countdown sequence for Operation Defiance." Around the world, Earth's conventional military forces were engaging the alien vessels as a distraction. Fighter jets and missile systems attacked the smaller crafts, while naval vessels fired artillery at the larger ships. The human weapons were largely ineffective against the Imperial shields, but they weren't meant to cause damage. They only needed to hold the aliens' attention. In space, Admiral Kravex of the Zordic Empire watched with satisfaction as his forces systematically destroyed Earth's major population centers. The primitive defenses the humans had mustered were barely worth acknowledging. Their missiles exploded harmlessly against his ship's energy shields, and their aircraft were easily shot down by automated defense systems. "Status report," he commanded. His second-in-command, a tall, gray-skinned warrior named Drell. "The assault proceeds as planned, Admiral," Drell responded. 17 major population centers have been neutralized. Resistance is minimal and ineffective." Kravex nodded. "And the humans' governing authorities?" "No formal communication yet. Our analysts predict they will attempt negotiation within the next 12 hours, with unconditional surrender following within 72. The Admiral made a sound of approval. The Earth conquest was proceeding exactly according to Imperial protocol. First, demonstrate overwhelming force. Next, accept surrender. Finally, extract resources and establish control. It had worked on 17 worlds across 3 star systems. Earth would be no different. "Admiral," interrupted an officer at the monitoring station. "Our sensors are detecting unusual energy readings from the planet's surface." Kravex turned. "Explain." "Unknown energy signature. Building rapidly in the region their maps label as the Rocky Mountains. It doesn't match any known human technology." Before the Admiral could respond, another officer called out in alarm. "Massive energy spike detected near the gas giant." On the main view screen, a blinding flash appeared near Jupiter. When the light faded, Ganymede, Jupiter's largest moon, had vanished completely. In its place was nothing but a slowly expanding cloud of dust and debris. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Kravex felt fear. Back in the underground facility, Carol and her team watched the successful demonstration with a mixture of awe and horror. The quantum displacement devices had worked perfectly. Ganymede, a moon larger than the planet Mercury, had been completely vaporized, its very molecular structure torn apart by the artificial rift in space-time. "Energy dissipation nominal," reported Alan, his voice shaking slightly. All 6 devices functioning within expected parameters. Carol allowed herself a moment of relief before activating her communication device. "Command, this is Lieutenant Bennett. The demonstration was successful. Awaiting further orders." At the Pentagon, General Susan Miller and Dr. Kevin Porter watched. The live feed from space telescopes showing the remains of Ganymede spreading into a thin ring of particles. "It worked," Kevin whispered, hardly believing what he was seeing. "The quantum field manipulation actually worked at that scale." General Miller turned to Eleanor Wright. "Madam Secretary, we need to send the message now, while they're still processing what they just witnessed." Eleanor nodded grimly. "Prepare the President. He needs to deliver our terms immediately." In the Oval Office, President Gregory Howard stood before a camera, his face grave but determined. Behind him was the American flag, and beside him stood representatives from other major world powers, a show of unity in humanity's darkest hour. When the recording began, he spoke clearly and without hesitation. "To the commanders of the invading forces currently attacking Earth, what you have just witnessed is not an anomaly or a natural event. The destruction of Jupiter's moon Ganymede was a deliberate demonstration of our defensive capabilities." Paused, letting the words sink in. "This is Earth's first and final warning. We have demonstrated a fraction of our defensive capabilities. We possess 6 more quantum displacement devices, each calibrated to your ship's exact coordinates. You have 1 hour to withdraw from our solar system. There will be no negotiation, no surrender, and no second chances." The message was transmitted on all frequencies the aliens had used for their own communications, ensuring they would receive it. In the underground facility, Carol's team had already recalibrated the quantum displacement devices. On her main screen, she could see 6 red targeting markers, each one locked onto one of the largest Imperial warships. If the order came, they would fire again, and this time the target would not be an uninhabited moon. "And now we wait," Alan said quietly, standing beside her. Carol nodded, watching the countdown timer begin its 60-minute descent. 1 hour to see if they're smart enough to leave. Across Earth, in shelters and bunkers and the ruins of cities, people looked to the sky, wondering if humanity's desperate gamble would succeed or if the attack had only just begun. Aboard the Imperial flagship, Admiral Kravex stood in shocked silence as he watched the recording of Ganymede's destruction for the 5th time. The moon, larger than many planets, had simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next, it was nothing but expanding dust. His gray skin had paled to an almost white color, and even his breathing seemed quieter than normal. "Play it again," he ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. The view screen showed the blinding flash once more, followed by the complete disintegration of the massive moon. No explosion in the traditional sense, just matter coming apart at its most basic level. "It's not possible," said his strategic advisor Morrow, who had served the Empire for 50 years across dozens of planetary conquests. "Our intelligence indicated the humans are barely interstellar. They cannot possibly possess weapons of such magnitude." But Zinn, the science officer, disagreed. "The energy signature is unlike anything in our database, Admiral. If they have weaponized quantum field manipulation at this level, they could indeed target our ships with precision." Kravex turned away from the screen. "What are our options?" "It must be a bluff," Morrow insisted. "A single demonstration doesn't mean they can target moving vessels. And even if they could, using such a weapon 6 more times would require enormous energy. Their planetary power grid would not support it." Zinn's expression showed her disagreement. "We cannot make that assumption. The humans have clearly concealed significant technological capabilities. We should consider that they might have power sources unknown to us." The Admiral nodded slowly. "Send a probe to what remains of Ganymede. I want detailed analysis." As his officers hurried to comply, Kravex moved to the window of his command chamber. Below, the blue-green planet continued its rotation, deceptively, peaceful from this distance. He had conquered 17 worlds during his career. Never once had he encountered a species with both the technological capability and the will to destroy a celestial body as a warning shot. The Empire had rules of engagement, protocols developed over 1,000 years of expansion. Those rules had never accounted for this scenario. On Earth, Lieutenant Carol Bennett monitored the Imperial fleet closely from the underground command center. The 6 remaining quantum displacement devices were indeed targeted on the largest Zordic vessels, just as President Howard had claimed in his message. What he hadn't mentioned was the cost of using them. If we have to fire again, what happens to our power grid? Carol asked Dr. Alan Murphy. Alan rubbed his tired eyes. Complete collapse. The demonstration on Ganymede drained 30% of North America's reserve power. Using all 6 devices simultaneously would cause worldwide blackouts lasting decades. We'd essentially be returning to the pre-industrial age. Carol nodded grimly. These weapons were truly humanity's last resort, a final act of defiance that would ensure mutual destruction. If the aliens called their bluff, the outcome would be devastating either way. How much time remaining? She asked. 42 minutes, answered a technician monitoring the countdown. In the Pentagon Command Center, General Susan Miller and Dr. Kevin Porter studied the alien fleet's movements with intense focus. Any change in their position? Susan asked. None, General, replied Officer Paul Grant, a young man whose calm under pressure had earned him a place on this critical team. They've maintained their orbital formation, but they've stopped deploying attack craft. The bombardment of Paris ceased approximately 5 minutes ago. Kevin pointed to a display showing energy readings from the fleet. They're running extensive scans, not just of our facilities but of Jupiter as well. They're trying to verify what happened to Ganymede. Let them look, Susan said. The more convinced they are of our capabilities, the better our chances. Eleanor Wright entered the room, her expression tense. The President is addressing the United Nations emergency session. World leaders are being briefed on Operation Defiance. Susan raised an eyebrow. The full briefing? No, Eleanor replied. Only that we have deployed a weapon capable of deterring the invasion. The details remain classified. Too many would panic if they knew the truth. The truth was that Project Deterrent had been developed by a small coalition of nations operating in secret for decades. Most world governments had no idea what was happening beneath the Rocky Mountains, and they certainly didn't know that humanity's survival now depended on a single bluff. In Florida, Sam Rodriguez huddled with his family in a community shelter beneath a local school. The aliens had not targeted their small coastal town yet, but the sky had grown dark with smoke from Miami, which had been hit hours earlier. Sam held his daughter close as they watched a small television showing news. Broadcasts. The attacks have stopped, announced a reporter, her voice tight with controlled emotion. Reports from around the world confirm that the alien bombardment ceased approximately 15 minutes ago. We don't know why, but there appears to be a lull in the invasion. Sam exchanged glances with his wife, Maria. Like millions of others, around the world they watched and waited, unaware of the diplomatic standoff occurring above their planet. The initial terror had given way to something else. A fierce determination that seemed to spread from person to person. Humanity would not go quietly. Back on the Imperial flagship, the probe's data from Ganymede had arrived. Admiral Kravex studied it with growing concern. Explain this, he commanded Zinn. The science officer's expression was grave. The moon wasn't merely destroyed by conventional means, Admiral. The very fabric of spacetime in that region has been fundamentally altered. Matter wasn't just broken apart, it was unwritten from existence. Could our shields protect against such a weapon? Kravex asked. Zinn hesitated before answering. No, Admiral. Our shields are designed to deflect energy and physical impacts. This weapon appears to operate on principles that would bypass those defenses entirely. Morrow stepped forward. Even so, Admiral, the Empire does not retreat. In 1,000 years of conquest, we have never withdrawn from a target world. To do so now would be unprecedented. Kravex turned to his strategic advisor. And in 1,000 years have we ever encountered a species that could destroy a moon as a warning shot? Silence fell across the command chamber. The Empire's entire approach to conquest relied on technological superiority. When that advantage disappeared, the protocols became less clear. The humans claimed to have 6 weapons targeted at our ships, Kravex said quietly. Even if they're bluffing about some aspects, the demonstration at Ganymede confirms they possess at least one such device. Are we willing to gamble the entire fleet on the assumption that they cannot or will not use more? In the mountains of Colorado, Carol Bennett received a communication from the Pentagon. Lieutenant, we're detecting movement from the Imperial fleet, said General Miller's voice. Multiple vessels are adjusting their positions. Carol felt her heart rate increase. Hostile movement? Unclear. Maintain targeting lock and stand by for possible countermeasures. The technicians around her worked with renewed urgency, making minute adjustments to ensure the quantum displacement devices remained locked on their targets, despite the fleet's movement. 26 minutes remaining, announced the countdown technician. All across Earth, people looked to the sky, wondering if the aliens would leave or if this was merely the calm before an even more devastating attack. The next half hour would determine the fate of humanity. Admiral Kravex stood at the center of the Imperial flagship's command chamber, surrounded by his senior officers. 15 minutes remained before the humans' deadline expired. The massive view screen showed Earth below them, its blue oceans and swirling white clouds deceptively peaceful from this distance. The fleet repositioning is complete, reported his second-in-command. All vessels maintain defensive formation, but we have established withdrawal vectors if needed. Kravex nodded. This small adjustment had been a prudent step, though it felt strange to even consider retreat. In his 1,000 cycles of service to the Zordic Empire, no species had ever forced them to consider abandoning a conquest. Admiral, Morrow said quietly, I must formally object to any consideration of withdrawal. The Empire's strength lies in our reputation for unstoppable force. If we retreat from these humans, word will spread to our other subject worlds. Your objection is noted, Kravex replied, but I am responsible for the lives of 80,000 Imperial citizens aboard this fleet. We face an unknown weapon that has demonstrated capabilities beyond our defensive measures. Zinn, the science officer, approached with a data tablet. Admiral, I have completed my analysis of the Ganymede incident. The weapon the humans deployed appears to create a localized disruption in the fundamental forces that bind matter together. Simply put, it doesn't destroy, it unmakes. Could it be a natural phenomenon they somehow triggered? Kravex asked, seeking any alternative explanation. No, Admiral. The energy signature is clearly artificial, and the precision targeting rules out any natural event. Morrow stepped forward again. Even if their weapon is real, using it 6 more times would require enormous energy. Their civilization would cripple itself in the process. Perhaps, said Kravex, but a species willing to destroy themselves to defeat us is not one we have protocols for handling. On Earth, in the underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Lieutenant Carol Bennett watched as the countdown timer showed 12 minutes remaining. The tension in the room was almost unbearable. Scientists and military personnel moved between workstations, checking and rechecking systems, ensuring the quantum displacement devices remained locked on their targets. Dr. Alan Murphy approached her, his face showing the strain of the past days. The calibrations are holding. If we need to fire, we can. Carol nodded. But we hope we won't have to. The power drain would be catastrophic, Alan said quietly. 98% of Earth's electrical systems would fail. Hospitals, water, treatment, food production. Everything would stop. Still better than complete destruction by the Empire, Carol replied. Alan didn't argue. They both knew this was humanity's last resort, a final, desperate gamble that they hoped would convince the aliens to leave without requiring actual use of the remaining weapons. In the Pentagon Command Center, General Susan Miller received updates from space monitoring stations around the world. "General, we're detecting energy fluctuations in the Imperial fleet," reported Officer Paul Grant. "Their engines are powering up, but they haven't broken orbit yet." Dr. Kevin Porter studied the readings. "They might be preparing for either attack or withdrawal. It's hard to tell with technology we don't fully understand." Susan turned to Eleanor Wright. "Madam Secretary, we need to inform the President. This could go either way in the next few minutes." Eleanor nodded gravely. "He's standing by." The world. Leaders are still in emergency session, waiting for news. Around the globe, people remained in shelters, basements, and bunkers, waiting to learn their fate. News broadcasts showed the alien ships visible in daylight skies, as bright points moving against the blue background. The initial attacks had claimed millions of lives, but the sudden halt in the bombardment had given people a chance to regroup, to find loved ones, to hope. In his Florida shelter, Sam Rodriguez held his sleeping daughter while his wife dozed fitfully beside them. The small television continued to broadcast updates, though there was little new information. Like millions of others, Sam didn't know about the quantum displacement devices or the ultimatum. He only knew that the attacks had stopped, and everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. "Something's changed," said an elderly man sitting nearby, pointing at the TV. "Look at how they're talking." The news anchor's expression had shifted, a mix of confusion and cautious hope crossing her face as she listened to her earpiece. "We're receiving reports that the alien vessels appear to be changing position. Observers at multiple locations confirm movement in the fleet. We don't yet know what this means, but there is definitely activity." In space, Admiral Kravex made his decision. The human's hour was nearly up, and he had to choose a path forward. He turned to address his command staff. "The Empire has existed for 10,000 cycles. In that time, we have conquered hundreds of worlds across dozens of star systems. Our strength lies not just in our weapons or ships, but in our ability to adapt, to recognize when the path forward requires a change in strategy." He paused, looking at the faces of his officers. Some showed confusion, others concern. A few, including Zinn, seemed to understand what was coming. "The humans have demonstrated technology that violates the fundamental principles of warfare as we understand them. A civilization might possess powerful weapons, but using them should require visible preparation, resource mobilization, and industrial capacity. This instant, surgical strike capability represents something the Empire has never encountered." "Admiral," Morrow began to object, but Kravex raised a hand to silence him. "I am responsible for the lives on these ships and for the future of the Empire. There are many worlds in the galaxy. Some will fall easily to our might. Others," he gestured toward the view screen showing Earth, "others may extract a price too high to justify the conquest." He turned to his navigation officer. "Begin withdrawal procedures. Maintain defensive postures until we clear the system." The order rippled through the command chamber, officers moving quickly to their stations to implement the unprecedented command. For the first time in recorded history, the Zordic Empire was retreating. On Earth, the reaction was immediate. "Movement confirmed," shouted Officer Grant in the Pentagon. "The Imperial fleet is breaking orbit. They're moving away from Earth." A cheer erupted throughout the command center. General Miller allowed a small smile before raising her hand for quiet. "Confirm their trajectory. Make sure this isn't some kind of tactical repositioning." "Trajectory analysis complete," replied a technician after a moment. "They're on a direct path out of the solar system, accelerating steadily." In the Rocky Mountains facility, Carol received the news with a mixture of disbelief and overwhelming relief. The technicians monitoring the quantum displacement devices looked to her for orders. "Maintain targeting lock until they're beyond Mars orbit," she commanded. This could still be a feint. But as the minutes passed, the Imperial fleet continued its withdrawal, moving steadily away from Earth at increasing speed. When they passed the orbit of Mars without changing course, Carol finally allowed herself to believe it might be over. "They're leaving," she said to Alan, who stood beside her watching the tracking displays. "They're actually leaving." Alan nodded, his eyes wet with tears of relief. Humanity just faced its greatest threat and didn't blink. That's something to be proud of. Across the world, as news spread that the aliens were retreating, people emerged from shelters to look at the sky. The long night of terror was ending, but the dawn would bring a new world, one forever changed by the knowledge that humanity was not alone in the universe, and that they had, against all odds, stood their ground. 3 days after the Imperial fleet left Earth's solar system, President Gregory Howard addressed the United Nations of Earth. The Grand Hall in New York had been quickly repaired for this historic occasion, though the city around it still lay in ruins. Leaders from every country on the planet attended, either in person or through secure video links. Billions of people watched the broadcast, hungry for answers and direction after the devastating attack. President Howard stood tall at the podium, his face showing the strain of sleepless nights but also a determined strength. "People of Earth," he began, his voice clear and steady. "Today we stand united not just as nations, but as a planetary civilization that has faced its greatest challenge. The attack on our world claimed over 4 million lives and destroyed countless homes and communities. We mourn these losses deeply, and we will rebuild what was taken from us." He paused, looking around the room at the assembled leaders. For the first time in recorded history, humanity was forced to confront the reality that we are not alone in the universe. The Zordic Empire, as they identified themselves in their retreat, represents an advanced civilization that has conquered many worlds before attempting to take ours. Murmurs spread through the crowd. For most people, this was the first time they had heard the name of their attackers or learned that the aliens had a vast empire beyond Earth. 3 years ago, unusual signals were detected from the edge of our solar system. A small group of nations working in secret began developing a defensive technology unlike anything we had created before. This project, which we called Deterrent, was our last line of defense against a threat we hoped would never materialize. On screens around the world, images appeared showing the underground facility in the Rocky Mountains and the quantum displacement devices that had saved humanity. When conventional weapons failed against the Imperial technology, we activated these devices. Using principles derived from recovered alien technology, we were able to demonstrate a capability that convinced the invaders to withdraw. President Howard didn't mention that the demonstration had depleted nearly a third of North America's power reserves, or that using all 6 devices would have sent humanity back to the pre-industrial age. Some truths were better kept classified, at least for now. Today I am announcing the formation of a unified Earth Defense Force, combining the military and scientific resources of all nations. Never again will we be caught unprepared. The road to recovery will be long, but we will rebuild together, and we will be ready should they ever return. The speech was met with thunderous applause. In the days that followed, a new sense of unity spread across the planet. Old conflicts and rivalries didn't disappear overnight, but they diminished in importance compared to the shared experience of surviving an alien invasion. In the Pentagon, 2 weeks after the withdrawal, Dr. Kevin Porter led a team of scientists studying the data collected during the invasion. His laboratory had been expanded, with resources and personnel from around the world assigned to his research group. The energy signatures from their propulsion systems suggest they use some form of space-folding technology, he explained to General Susan Miller during a briefing. If we can understand and replicate it, we could reach other star systems within years instead of centuries. Susan nodded. And their weapons? Can we develop defenses against them? We're working on it, Kevin replied. Their energy beams operate on principles similar to our particle accelerators but far more advanced. Given time and resources, I believe we can create shield technology. Eleanor Wright, who had been promoted to head the new Global Defense Council, joined the conversation. Time might be something we don't have much of. How long before they return? Or before some other alien civilization discovers us? Kevin shrugged. Impossible to say. But one thing is certain. We're no longer just looking up at the stars in wonder. We're preparing for what might come from them. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, the facility housing the quantum displacement devices had been expanded. Lieutenant Carol Bennett, now Colonel Bennett, supervised a team 3 times larger than before. The original 6 devices remained, but new prototypes were being developed with more efficient energy usage. The breakthrough came when we realized we could reduce the power consumption by adjusting the quantum field parameters. Dr. Alan Murphy explained as he guided Carol through the new research section. The next generation devices should require only 40% of the energy the originals needed. Carol studied the blueprints with approval. And the targeting precision? Improved. By a factor of 10, Alan said proudly. We could target a specific ship rather than just a general area. Let's hope we never need to use them, Carol replied. But it's good to be prepared. In Florida, Sam Rodriguez and his family had returned to their home, which fortunately had escaped damage. Sam had taken a job helping rebuild Miami, joining thousands of others in the massive reconstruction efforts happening around the world. One evening, as he sat on his porch watching his daughter play in the yard, a news alert came over his phone. The message was brief but significant. Astronomers had detected signals indicating the Zordic fleet had entered a neighboring star system, bypassing it entirely without any attempt at engagement. Sam showed the news to his wife, Maria. "They're avoiding us," he said wonderingly. "They could have attacked that system, but they didn't." Maria nodded. "Maybe they're spreading the word. Stay away from Earth." The thought made Sam smile. Humanity, which had seemed so insignificant when faced with the technology of the Empire, had managed to earn something unexpected: respect, or at least cautious avoidance. Far beyond the edge of Earth's solar system, Admiral Kravex composed his report to the Imperial High Command. He carefully detailed the encounter with Earth, the demonstration of the humans' quantum displacement technology, and his decision to withdraw rather than risk the fleet. In his private quarters, after submitting the report, he stood looking at a holographic display of the Zordic Empire's territory. Hundreds of star systems glowed with the Imperial colors, showing the vast reach of their civilization. The loss of one potential conquest hardly registered on this scale. Yet Kravex knew that his report would cause a fundamental shift in Imperial strategy. For the first time, the Empire had encountered a species that possessed both unexpected technological capabilities and an absolute, unwavering resolve to protect their world regardless of cost. He added a final recommendation to his report, something unprecedented in Imperial history. Earth would be designated as prohibited intervention territory in all Imperial navigational databases. The Empire would not be launching another attack on Earth. They had received their warning, and against all Imperial doctrine, they had chosen to heed it. As dawn broke over a healing Earth, humanity looked to the stars with new awareness. They were not alone in the universe, and now they knew they could stand their ground when needed. The Empire had launched an attack on Earth, and had received one final warning they would not soon forget.